Christ has died, Christ is risen, Christ will return again. Welcome, dear ones, to the online version of Easter worship from the kind people at Second Congregational Church in Attleboro. We are so grateful that you've joined us in this virtual worship space. While the church building may be closed this Easter morning, the church is still alive, just as Christ is alive. Jesus may have left the building, but God's presence to comfort and to guide remains with us all. This is a church where everyone is welcome. It doesn't matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, you are welcome in this place. If you don't already have a church home, we invite you to visit us again when we'll be able to, once again, meet you face to face. In the meantime, feel free to reach out via social media. Even a simple phone call will do, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have. The same is true for you church members. As more than one Christian has observed, Good Friday means that you can nail beauty to a cross, but you can't keep it there. And Easter means that you can bury love in a cave, but it won't stay there either. That's because love is stronger than death. He is risen. Christ is risen indeed. Let us worship today together.
The lesson is taken from the 16th chapter of the Gospel according to St. Mark, beginning at the first verse. And when the Sabbath was past, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James and Salome, had brought sweet spices that they might come and anoint him. And very early in the morning, the first day of the week, they came unto the sepulchre at the rising of the sun. And they said among themselves, Who shall roll us away the stone from the door of the sepulchre? And when they looked, they saw that the stone was rolled away, for it was very great. And entering into the sepulchre, they saw a young man sitting on the right side, clothed in a long white garment, and they were affrighted. And he saith unto them, Be not affrighted. Ye seek Jesus of Nazareth, which was crucified. He is risen. He is not here. Behold, the place where they laid him. But go your way and tell his disciples and Peter that he goeth before you into Galilee. There ye shall see him, as he said unto you. And they went out quickly and fled from the sepulchre, for they trembled and were amazed. Neither said anything to any man, for they were afraid. And may God add his blessing and his understanding to this reading from his holy work.
Easter forces us to deal with the perennial questions such as, what does the Easter Bunny do the rest of the year? Who actually eats jelly beans, candy corn, and chocolate eggs? And what are Pete's made out of anyway? Seriously though, there are important questions that we're reminded of, especially at this time of year. For example, the timeless question of Job in the Hebrew Bible, who asks, if a man die, will he live again? After all, scientists tell us that death is the irreversible cessation of circulatory and respiratory functions, including the entire brain and brain stem. Easter morning, on Resurrection Sunday, I greet you. Christians have for many centuries proclaimed an answer to that question by saying, He is risen. He is risen indeed. And in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 24, Jesus has died, and any dream his followers had of a rescue has now been buried with him. Nevertheless, several women persist, fearless of repercussions. They were going to apply spices to a dead man's body, plain and simple. And the exhilaration of the days and weeks leading up to this time had finally given way to despair and a piercing grief with only a corpse to show for it. The violence of an insane brutality hung vivid in their minds as they witnessed an incompetent justice and absent mercy. But I want to focus my thoughts for the next few minutes on the story of Mary from the Galilean seaside town of Magdala. This Mary would be there to the end, at the cross. She'd be there when Joseph of Arimathea had Jesus' body put in a tomb, and then she'd return at sunrise to anoint that body. These women were reverent and devoted, and they were learning that their devotion and reverence didn't necessarily mean a triumph over pain, rather, only a certainty that they would now be intimate with suffering in a way they'd never known. They were all aware that dead means dead, and that visiting a grave was not enough to bring a loved one back from the land of the dead. In Luke chapter 22, verse 2, they found the stone had been rolled away, but when they went in, they didn't find the body of Jesus. And while they were standing there perplexed, behold, it says, two men stood by them in dazzling apparel. And as they were frightened, they bowed their faces to the ground. The language is suddenly, out of nowhere, they were petrified, they were terrified. And the men said to them, "Why do you seek the dead among the living?" Which is an appropriate question, but maybe not so appropriate for a cemetery. The men said, "He is not here, but he has risen." Perhaps at times you and I are not in the right place to find what we're looking for. When my first daughter, Abigail, was 3 years old, we left her in the care of a babysitter. We were traveling. We were passing through the great state of Colorado, and we were staying with friends. So not only was Abby in a strange house, but she was with strange people. And her mother and father, we'd gone out to eat and left her in the care of that babysitter. So she reached for familiar things in the house there that she had near her. In this case, it was her pacifier and her pillow and her father's tennis shoe, running shoe. My wife and I returned later that evening, of course, to find her sleeping soundly in the bedroom doorway, her arms clutching my well-worn shoe. And I remember smiling and feeling that wisp of regret, but I mostly laughed it off. What I didn't realize was probably a very traumatic experience for her. And I've got a picture I wanted to show you of that time. This is my daughter, Abby, at the door. Today is Easter Sunday, and if this celebration of the triumph over the ultimate loss means anything, perhaps it has to do with the tenacious fixing of oneself at the door of the tomb, clinging desperately for deliverance, even though we are entirely spent, bathed in a pool of our own tears, our grief too deep to bear, exhausted by too much longing and looking and hoping. Mary Magdalene comes down to us in history as a troubled soul. The Bible says she was delivered from 7 demons. 7, that's the perfect number in this context of the Jewish faith, the number of perfection. Somehow Mary had been healed perfectly, fully, and completely. And as you know, you and I, as adults, we contain oceans of pain. We didn't choose our families of origin, nor did we have a say in most of what happened to us throughout our early years anyway. Life forced us to conform, and not every move or change was blessed and good. We may very well need to be delivered and healed again and again. But Mary of Magdala did find rest. She did find peace in the Jesus way, and that was enough. He is not here. He is risen. Remember what he told you while he was still in Galilee, that the Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men and be crucified and on the third day rise. And they remembered his words, and returning from the tomb, the women, Mary Magdalene included, told all these things to the 11 and all the rest. Our searching, our looking is sometimes blown out by the winds of suffering and disappointment and despair. And at such times, we need to consider what it is that we're not only looking for, but what we're living for. You know, as you know, many good and valiant people are dying from this current pandemic, and doctors and nurses are dying too. And others in the service to their fellow humans are literally putting their lives on the line to save the people that they are serving. That's courage. That's love. That's hope. That's something worth living for. These women loved Jesus and they'd lived his values. And now they tell the disciples what they've seen, only to be told by the disciples that their words are idle talk. The Greek is loros. Their words are nonsense. It's the medical term for being sick and delirious. You are fever prone. But thankfully, the story doesn't end there. Mary of Magdala, having returned alone to the empty tomb, sees another man, the gardener she imagines. A disturbing hoax, another cruel plot twist in this ongoing suffocating drama. And she's crying. Of course she's crying. She's devastated. I used to see her saying politely, "Please, sir, can you tell me where he is?" But I don't see it that way anymore. After all, this is the first person to tell everyone else about the resurrection, which is the cornerstone of Christianity. In fact, the Eastern Orthodox Church calls Mary the apostle to the apostles. "What's going on?" she says. "Tell me where he is and I'll go get him myself." She's no victim. She's no Easter lily pushover. She presses forward, respectfully demanding an answer. And Jesus, who she thinks is the gardener, he says to her, "Woman, why are you crying? Why are you weeping? Whom are you seeking?" I wonder, when have we missed Jesus? When have we missed the presence and voice of God in our hurry, in our important business to find answers, to seek resolution? She said to him, "Sir, if you carried him away, tell me where you laid him, and I will take him away." Jesus said to her, "Mary." And she turned and said to him in Aramaic, "Rabboni," which means teacher. You see, God knows your name. No one escapes God's care, even those who don't believe in God, even those who are living lives in complete opposition to the values and virtues. And here is Jesus, Rabboni. He knows their name. "Go to my brothers and say to them, I am going to my Father, my God and your God." And so Mary goes to the disciples and she says, "I've seen the Lord," and begins to tell them that. You see, for the Christian, the resurrection is the central proclamation of our common faith. We can live in hope because you and I, we are Easter people. Friends, the fact is, resurrection is all around us. The cycle of each day, it's springtime, is a rebirth, a revelation of a new reality. The old remains, but it's changing. It's moving, becoming something new. All matters. What we are will one day be lost, but the universe knows where to find its missing parts. If Easter means anything, it means that we are to abandon all despair in the face of an absolute blankness, because hope cannot be buried in a cave or otherwise. Resurrection addresses what the heart is looking for, and it gives us a purpose to live into. Love is stronger than life. Love is stronger even than death. And I remember one evening long ago when I witnessed it, this hope of resurrection. It looked a lot like a spent, pacified, poured out toddler, eyes strained with tears, yet focused and determined, fortress-like resistant, barricaded in a long forgotten doorway, comforted by an old shoe. He is risen. He is risen indeed. Dear ones, here is the Easter blessing for this day. We will seek the risen Jesus in every time and place. We will connect across the miles through technology and prayer. We will not only seek out to comfort ourselves in the familiar things, but dare to risk newness of thought and newness of action. We know that resurrection makes all things new. While the church buildings may be closed this Easter morning, the church is alive, just as Christ is alive. Christ is risen. Christ is risen indeed. Go out in peace. Go out in hope. Live the resurrected life.